I don't care what you say. I don't care what you tell me, but I know you're full of
You know, it's all right, Antoine. I got it.
We might be wrong. We don't know. We're in the business to make money.
Yeah, man, unfortunately this happens a lot. I mean, you gotta have something saying that it's real.
Okay, maybe the thing is a fake.
It's a real offer, or?
That's a legitimate offer, yeah.
That's not a legitimate offer. You're just using your position here, trying to buy something for below its market value. I have a final offer for you, $3,500, and I'll take cash, $100 bills.
This first guy, Raphael, comes to pawn a Perseus and Pegasus statue. As pawn shop owners, we all know you get to pawn various interesting items. We can only guess that it is through this that Rick knows so much more about the statue's history than even the customer who brought it to be pawned.
This is a statue called Pegasus, and this is Perseus. Perseus was the mythological figure that killed Medusa, okay? And the helmet he's wearing right here made him invisible.
You got me. I don't know what you're talking about.
Even I don't either. However, I must admit that this statue is pretty interesting. Since Rick knows his statues, he was able to identify that this Émile Picot sculpture must be a famous one. According to Rick, if its authenticity is confirmed, the pawn shop and Raphael will be cashing out on it big time.
Genuine Picot, we're talking thousands of dollars. His sculptures are highly collectible, but in the art world, there's just millions of fakes, so you have to be really careful. The patina looks right. What doesn't look right is there's some pitting right here.
So Rick says, but Raphael thinks that Rick is just making imaginary things up. However, we cannot blame Rick for being very careful about the statue. We're talking about a rare Pegasus statue here. As Rick continued expressing his opinion about the Pegasus sculpture, Raphael got madder and even acted rudely.
Okay, I mean, I just don't see 1800s here. It's an American foundry in the 1950s. It's not as old as this date says it is.
I don't care what you say. I don't care what you tell me, but I know you're full of
Oh man, that's a bummer. It sucks to find out that something you thought was authentic turned out not to be. Raphael is extremely upset, and for the sake of the Harrisons, I hope that Rick and Richard either call in an expert or let go of the deal completely. However, there might be no reason to waste the expert's time since Rick is confident that the Pegasus statue is fake. What do you think the Pawn Stars would do? Let's find out.
Might be wrong. We don't know. We're in the business to make money. But when we don't feel comfortable with something, we're going to back off. We really appreciate you bringing it in, but it's not for us. That's all I can tell you.
Poor guy, but we're not done with everything antique. In the next clip, this guy, who calls himself an amateur collector, brings in a flintlock pistol created in the 18th century. This discovery sounds really cool, so let's find out more about it.
I'm here today to sell my 18th century flintlock pistol. I consider myself an amateur collector. This is the oldest one I've ever bought. It's got a lot of history to it. I think it's a really good gun.
So why are you trying to get rid of it?
Well, my wife is kind of pushing me for it.
Isn't that sweet? Well, all is sweet and rosy until the question of authenticity comes into the picture. But this guy seems pretty confident about his antique pistol. While examining the pistol, Corey asked the seller about the price he wanted to sell it. Here's what he had to say.
So how much are you looking to get for it?
I'd like to get $1,000 out of it. I think it's worth it.
$1,000, and it's not that it wouldn't be worth $1,000. It's, I just don't know if it's real. I'd like to call in an expert. If it is real, then I can definitely take it, and we could probably work out a deal.
No problem.
All right, deal.
Interesting. Anyway, Corey brings in an antique item expert to further examine the pistol and hopefully give his opinion on the pistol's actual worth. Let's see how that goes.
Is yours, Jim?
Yeah.
And what do you know about it?
Well, I got it at a gun show, and the seller had bought it from an estate sale, and it'd been in the family for generations, and I was fortunate enough to get it.
Well, so far, so good. Things seem to be going really smoothly, and it looks like Jim will be going back home to his wife, a happy man. However, Sean, the antique pistol expert, was nowhere near done with his analysis, and what he says next would leave you shell-shocked.
Fortunately, just right off the bat, I know that this is, unfortunately, a reproduction.
Okay, so how can you tell?
First of all, the markings were, punched in as opposed to hand engraved. The crown over GR mark is for King George III.
Just like that, the antique pistol went from a supposed $2,500 worth to $100 worth. The situation is really tense right now, and everyone is shocked, especially Corey and the seller. It must be highly embarrassing for Jim, especially when he admits the price he originally got it for. Take a look at this.
Paid $800 for this.
I'm sorry you got burned.
Yeah, so, okay, maybe the thing is a fake.
Yeah, man, unfortunately this happens a lot. I mean, you gotta have something saying that it's real. I feel bad for the guy. I mean, I wouldn't want to lose that kind of money either, but I mean, he should have got the paperwork.
A man calls the pawn shop and asks Chumley to come take a look at his entertainment pirate ship float, which is a float but on land. Are you confused? Yeah, Chum was too.
Plus you had a boat.
It is a boat.
Does it float?
No, it is a float.
I thought a boat floats.
This boat floats and parades.
I'm confused.
Shiver me timbers.
Call the guys down at the pawn shop today to check out my street legal pirate ship.
Chum seems interested in the pirate ship. So, when the owner, Buck, offers him a tour of the float and even a ride in it just so he can examine its features, he does not hesitate to accept the offer. After all, he has to test the item before purchasing it, right? Anyway, let's see how the tour goes, shall we?
Those black pipes, they pump out all the fog you could ever want. It's got the front stage. You come down the stairs, you got center stage. We've got a wet bar here. Then when we go to the top right up here, we've got lasers that come out of there that paint the whole floor green and red. We got a big screen TV on the back that films the entertainment, whatever's happening in the boat, so the people behind you can enjoy what's happening.
Chum seems in awe of the float, and knowing this guy, the gears in his head are already turning, suggesting that this would not be a bad purchase. However, $250,000 is a lot of money to spend all at once on this float, so he decides to send pictures of the float to Rick so he can get his permission to purchase it. Let's see what Rick has to say.
Let's go. Chum's phone just keeps on going straight to voicemail.
I'm sure it's all right, dude. Here, I'll text him. Don't buy the float. Send. There, everything will be fine. Don't worry, I'm sure he's not gonna buy it. He doesn't have any money on him.
But he's an idiot.
Woo! I'm on a boat!
Would he? I don't think so. While Chumley waits for Rick's response, he continues to engage the float seller. After all, there's no harm in striking a bargain, just in case he's able to get a reasonable price for it. For all he knows, Rick might give him the go-ahead to buy the float. Will Chum be able to strike a fair bargain for the float? We'll find out shortly.
What are you trying to get for it?
$250,000. $240,000?
I'm thinking you could rent this boat out for a couple grand a night. I mean, it's a gold mine. I'm pretty sure Rick will want it. I can give you $100,000.
Man, my bottom dollar's $190,000. That's giving it away.
Well, Chum made the best choice after all, or else Rick would never let him hear the end of it if he had gone ahead with the purchase. However, there's a problem. After Chum declined the seller's offer, he got a little enraged and wasn't having any of it. Plus, what he finds out after he asks Chum to call Rick again to confirm makes the situation worse.
Well, I'm glad you had a good time, but I'm driving you all over this place. Why don't you call your boss?
I could do that. Let's see.
Well,
he might want it.
Do it.
It looks like he texted me already. Do not buy the float. That was Rick, my boss. He said not to buy the float in a text message.
Huh. That's it?
Yeah. I'm gonna have to pass.
Well, that's bull.
This next customer, Dr. Hal, brings in Semi Mosley's prototype guitar, which he claims to have gotten directly from Semi Mosley. However, Rick is confused as to why Hal has the prototype of such a famous luthier instead of the original. So, he asks Hal about it. Let's hear his response, shall we?
It's a prototype because when he was at a guitar convention in Europe, he met a Spanish luthier who was building flamenco guitars with violin joints. And they had such a remarkable tone that Semi thought gospel musicians should have something that sings when they do the Lord's work. So consequently, he came back.
Every seller needs to learn the art of marketing their products from this guy. Dr. Hal explains a little about Mosley's inspiration for creating the guitar, and even shows Rick that the guitar is listed in the celebrity registry.
His guitar is probably the most well-known rare guitar anywhere. It's listed in the celebrity registry. 009, 1965 gospel prototype, blue, Semi Mosley's personal gospel.
All right, I'm interested. It sounds really, really cool. Jimi Hendrix, the Beach Boys, Kurt Cobain.
The paperwork is on point. The guitar looks to be in shape, and there's no reason for Rick not to buy this monumental piece. But just like every other fantastic product, the pricing always determines whether or not Rick or anyone at the pawn shop will purchase the item. Let's see how much the seller wants to get from selling this particular piece to Rick.
How much do you want for it?
Well, it's about the rarest prototype guitar that exists. At a high-energy auction event, it would bring somewhere between $200,000 and $250,000. Now, I know this is not an auction, but realistically, I'd take $100,000 for it.
As expected, no matter how much Hal claims to be an expert, there is no way Rick will be cutting a deal with him if he does not confirm the guitar's authenticity from an expert. Let's see how that goes, shall we?
There's a couple things I can get a date on this. The Mosley tailpiece, for one. The Mosrite of California on the pickups. The style of the knobs. I would say this guitar is probably 67 or 68. Serial number is GA009. So this is the prototype gospel guitar.
Yikes. One of the worst situations is when you think you know everything there is to know about an item you want to pawn, but then an expert comes in and upstages you. Not only that, but he also values it way below your original asking price. Now, that's not something Dr. Hal would take. And from then on, the whole situation gets heated like never before.
That's absolutely ridiculous because it's been appraised over the years. Back in the 90s, it was appraised at a minimum of $100,000, and that was in the 90s.
I'm just saying, from knowing what I've just recently sold myself, I don't think anybody's going to step up that high for it.
Well, the guitar's been insured for $100,000 or better.
I mean, I can insure my shoes.
Well, that was intense. Dr. Hal was not backing down at all. For Jamie's sake, we are glad he was able to put an end to the heated situation. Otherwise, we don't know what would have happened between him and Dr. Hal. Even Jamie admits he was a little scared of the customer.
You know, it's really cool to see Simi's guitar, but to be honest with you, I'm just kind of glad I got out of there without a black eye.
He can't know what I know about it after 44 years.
Okay. He just told us that Les Paul's prototypes went for less money than you're asking.
It's not only rare, but it's also beautiful.
Still on the most disrespectful customers, let's take a look at this next seller, who comes into the pawn shop to sell a photograph of Abraham Lincoln and his wife, Mary Todd. It is not rare for the pawn shop to receive things like this, but Rick is already in doubt about the item. But let's take a look at what this is all about.
An Abraham Lincoln from, I believe, 1863.
I thought Abe only took photos by himself.
What are you talking about?
Oh, he's right about that.
Are you jealous?
You know what that means?
I just know that in ambrotypes, it took like 30 minutes to develop, and they had to like be fixed straight with like some...
Oh, chum. I'm sure Rick has thought of a million ways to get rid of him, but hasn't decided on what to do yet. Rick continues telling the seller and chum about Lincoln's history.
Abe did not have a lot of money, was just starting his legal career, so they postponed the marriage until his law firm took off, which it did, so they were able to get married. All right, so where'd you get this?
I bought it from a collector who sold me a collection of 11 photographs.
Well, I think we all know by now that Rick checking with an expert is a given. Maureen, the expert, comes into the shop as promised and immediately gets to work. Let's see what he has to say about this picture.
It's supposed to be Abraham Lincoln and Mary Todd Lincoln.
Yeah, I have my doubts.
Okay. Do you mind if I take a look at it?
Absolutely.
This is a really beautiful photograph. It's an ambrotype, as you know. And ambrotype, they enhanced the cheeks and the lips to make them look more lifelike.
Just as Rick thought, there's an issue with the supposed Abraham Lincoln picture. However, the seller had a counter-argument to the photo expert's point. Let's hear his opinion.
There are some things about Abraham's face. He had a nose that was crooked, and he definitely has one in this photo as well.
Well, I have to admit, I know why you think this is Abraham Lincoln, because he has that sort of gaunt shape to his head. There's another thing we can look at, and that is...
Right. At this point, the seller was getting more agitated and clearly trying hard to contain his anger. However, his calm lasted only a few seconds until he literally exploded and disrespectfully lashed out at the photo expert. Here, take a look.
I've been doing this for a really long time.
Okay.
And a lot of people come to me saying that they have...
They'll be coming to me in 10 years. I'm honest to God.
I know, you think this is worth $1 million, and
no,
you would like it to be worth $1 million. And all I'm saying is, this is my opinion, that it's not Abraham Lincoln.
Speaking of pictures and portraits, this next customer, Elia, approaches Rick Harrison to sell a portrait coin of Julius Caesar. What's interesting about this customer is that he is focused on his aim, which is not to get any lowball price for this coin. That's exactly what he said. Take a look.
Yeah, this is cool. I mean, you have Caesar Dictator. One of the neat things is where it says dictator on the front of it. That's a negative term nowadays, but back then it wasn't. During times of war, they would assign a person the title dictator, and a dictator would do what was necessary to preserve the republic.
Yeah, only Rick and maybe some of you would get that joke. But as for the seller, he was not concerned with any of that history talk. However, we all know Rick. Once he starts, it's almost impossible to get him to stop. Not minding Ilya's uninterested look, Rick continued his story about the Julius Caesar coin.
It's a 2,000-year-old coin with Caesar's face on it, and I want it. So, are you looking to sell it?
Yeah.
Okay. How much were you looking to get out of it?
I want 4,400, please.
Okay. There's a million variables, especially with ancient coins.
Right. Once the coin expert arrives at the shop, we'll see just how important Ilya claims this coin is. It took a while, but Ilya finally reached and started examining the coin while dropping some tidbits about Julius Caesar.
Julius Caesar. Few names in history ring with the familiarity of Julius Caesar. You know, there's Napoleon, you know, a few other people you can throw in. His murder inspired Shakespeare. Yeah. I mean, this is a serious bit of history.
After confirming the authenticity, Rick is usually concerned about the item's worth. What does the coin expert think this particular coin is worth? Let's find out.
Get a coin like this, there's no shortage of buyers when they are in fantastic condition. The very best of these have brought in the neighborhood of $200,000 each.
Okay.
But there's a good amount of wear that's circulated, and I think this is worth in the neighborhood of...
Ouch. I understand the customer felt hurt, but was that really necessary? It's not the expert's fault because, according to him, most of these coins were generally undervalued for a reason no one knows. Even Rick tries to explain this to the seller, who is too upset to listen.
He's been in the coin business his entire life, and I'm gonna take his opinion. You know, I'd give you $1,000 for the coin.
Is this a real offer, or?
That's a legitimate offer, yeah.
That's not a legitimate offer. You're just using your position here, trying to buy something for below its market value.
Yeah, I guess that would be better for him. Next up, this customer comes in with an Atlanta Braves 1995 World Series Champions ring. Wow, such a mouthful. I hope the ring turns out to be as interesting as its name sounds. Well, let's find out.
Well, that's a pretty cool year, man. Team of the 90s. Got there 7 times and then finally won World Series in 95. They're like the Buffalo Bills of the 90s, man. They just couldn't pull it off. I came to the pawn shop today to try to sell my 1995 Atlanta Braves World Series ring. I'd like to sell it because my wife and I were moving to Vietnam.
Wow. The boys seem to know so much about this ring and the events that took place during the period it was won, such as the games that took place during that period. Corey claims that the rings became more exquisite and were worth more money as the year passed because of the change in design and additional diamonds. Hence, he recognized that this ring would cost a lot of money.
It's no big surprise that these things can go for a lot of money. You know, there's a pretty big difference when it comes from staff to player rings. I mean, everybody wants a player's ring because it was by a guy who actually won the World Series. So what do you want to do with it, my man?
Yeah, I want to sell it.
Right. While he waited for the arrival of the Harrison's expert, the seller hoped the expert would value his ring at a reasonable price. Hopefully, one that is close to his valuation. Anyway, let's hear from the expert, shall we?
95 Braves championship ring.
The Braves are actually the oldest continuously playing team in American professional sports.
Oh, wow.
Over the years, though, they had a lot of ups and downs. Finally, in the early 90s, they found new life with a great lineup that propelled them into the 95 World Series. It was a great contest. One hand, you got the Indians.
Interesting. Meanwhile, Corey explains that while he believes the ring is exotic, he's not too sure about getting it since it's a staff ring. What is it about a staff ring that Corey isn't too thrilled about? Let's find out.
I know there's a huge difference in price between a staff ring and a player's ring.
Right.
I think it might be Ted Turner's ring, which is kind of crazy. I mean, what do you think it might be worth?
Let's take a look at the ring here. We have a large diamond set on top of a blue stone, and we're going to have 18 smaller diamonds surrounding it. The company Jostens, they made the rings for the 95 championship Braves.
Oh, that doesn't sound good. It looks like the ring is not as unique as everyone thought. However, the expert still asserts that it is still worth some money. How much exactly will that be?
With the original box and everything, you're looking at around $2 grand.
All right.
I was really disappointed. They bring some bozo off the street. I don't know where he came from. All of a sudden, he comes through the door and...
Next up, Elle approaches Rick with an Austrian miniature pinfire pistol. This pistol is so tiny that only a baby's finger would probably be able to fit into its trigger hole. This amuses Rick so much he couldn't believe his eyes, but he thought it was fantastic.
I came to the pawn shop today to try to sell my pinfire pistol. I'd like to get $100 for it. The least amount of money I'd take is probably $50.
So where did you get this?
I found it in a trinket box that my mom left me.
So what is it, a gun?
It is. It's a little miniature pistol, 2mm, the world's smallest pistol.
Wow, that's interesting. Rick asked the seller, Elle, whether she knew how old the miniature gun was. Here was her response.
It was made like from 1900 to 1930. It has made in Austria written on the barrel there. And I understand that that was after 1900. They had to start putting made in.
Yeah, I mean, normally I can't buy a gun made after 1898.
Right. Rick is clearly uninterested in buying this pistol. In fact, his excitement seems to have reduced at this point. but he still asks Ella how much she wants to sell it. Let's see what her response will be.
I was thinking around $100.
You can buy them brand new with like some ammo and some flares and attachments and a cleaning kit for like 80 bucks.
This next item is a little interesting. Joe struts into the pawn shop with a chest collection of Pez. But the thing is, there are no candies per se in the box. So why does Joe want to sell a chest of empty Pez? Let's find out.
They have no candy in them at all. These are all from the 1960s, 1970s.
What good are candy dispensers without candy?
Come on, man. You work with this guy. I'm coming to the pawn shop today to try to sell some of my Pez collection.
This man came prepared. He continued to show the boys his collection of various characters, which engrossed Chum and Corey. Joe has a whole collection of 50 Pez dispensers and wants to sell all of them. Corey realized how proud Joe was of his collection, so he asked Joe why he was looking to sell. Let's hear what his response was.
To be honest with you, a lot of these are my doubles.
Okay.
And I just want to unload them.
Okay.
So I can make money on them and
buy more Pez, obviously.
buy more Pez, definitely.
Okay.
More rare ones.
I'm definitely interested in these Pez dispensers. I mean, there's a huge community out there of people who collect these things online.
Damn, this negotiation is getting a little heated, I must say. Joe doesn't back down on his price, and Corey doesn't think the Pez collection is worth the amount Joe wants it for. What's going to happen now? Will the boys end up striking a bargain? Let's find out.
And I'm not looking to break even at all. I put them on the internet, next thing you know, I'm competing with 5 other guys selling the same Pez.
I understand that, but these 3 pieces alone are a Gino.
Jimmy walks into the pawn shop carrying a 1958 vintage Sea Flight Glastron boat, which Rick and Chum initially cracked jokes about. However, the atmosphere changes when Jimmy reveals why he visited the Harrison's gold and silver pawn shop.
I came down to the pawn shop today to sell my 1958 Glastron Sea Flight. I have another project in mind, and it happens to be another big fin boat. I'd like to get $10,500 for that boat because you couldn't find another boat like that.
Do you know any history on it?
This boat was made in 1958 by a fledgling company named Glastron.
Rick shows interest in the boat and begins to showcase his expertise, as usual. Once Rick starts sharing his knowledge, it's hard to stop him. So, let's prepare for a lesson from him, shall we?
In '58, the space race was just starting, and everything had fins. Anything they could make rocket-like was cool at the time.
This thing's supersonic?
No, it's not supersonic. This thing probably did 30.
It's got 80 horses behind it.
Does it work?
Yeah.
All right.
But wait, Jimmy unexpectedly corrects Rick about the boat, catching everyone off guard. It seems Rick isn't the only one teaching this time, and it's clear he's not too happy about it. Anyway, what price is Jimmy hoping to get for his boat?
How much did you want for it?
$10,500.
Ooh. This is my problem with it. It's like lipstick on a pig. I mean, we have a terrible paint job, okay? It doesn't have the original motor.
Okay, I realize all the flaws with this boat. That's not, the point is just the styling, and can you even find one?
At this moment, Jimmy needs to take a step back. He makes an offer, expecting the Harrisons to accept it right away. But we know Rick. Once he's decided, there's no changing it. This could make it difficult for him to refuse Jimmy, who isn't willing to take no for an answer.
I mean, I wish I could do something. It's just, I don't even want to make you an offer. There's too much work that's got to be done for me to make anything.
Really? Okay.
All right.
That's fine.
Well, thanks for bringing it in, though, man.
He was basically insulting me with the paint thing, the petty stuff, you know? That's a good-looking boat. This guy.
Davis walks into the pawn shop carrying old, weighty weapons that look like they belong to the medieval era. Their appearance makes it baffling why he has them in the first place. Regardless, let's examine these odd items.
I've collected medieval weapons for about 20 years. I usually hang them up on the wall in my living room or in my collection room. It's like some people like Monet, some people like Picasso. I like medieval weapons.
Halberds, huh? How old are these?
They're about 500 years old. 500
years old. What makes you think they're that old?
The Harrisons have shown interest in purchasing these unique axes from Davis. We're about to find out his price plan.
$7,500 each. All right. Have you ever had them looked at or appraised by anybody, or?
I've collected medieval weapons for quite some time. I've done my research, so I'm very confident in what they are.
You know, there's people who have their whole houses decorated in this style of stuff. I'm sure I could sell it to somebody.
Will they make a deal? To determine the worth of the pole axes, Corey calls in Craig, an expert in antiques. At this point, I'm eager to hear Craig's take on these unusual weapons, and I'm sure you are too. Let's find out what he had to say.
So, we got some halberds here. What do you think?
Yeah, very nice halberd. Very nice.
Thank you. How old do you think that is?
Well, about 500 years. I'm going to put it back down again.
That'll make me more comfortable.
Let me put the halberd down.
Corey wanted to know if Craig's evaluation confirmed that the weapons were from the 16th century. So, he asked the expert, and here's what Craig said in response.
Halberds were used during the 1500s. The wood on these break and are repaired and replaced. This is not original wood, so it's made in the style, but that's not a big deal. The real question is, are the heads real? The Victorians were famous for building classic production of older weapons.
Even though Craig pointed out the axe's decorative value, Davis was unimpressed by the assessment. In fact, his disagreement with the expert's opinion seemed to fuel his anger.
You think it's not original because it's flimsy, but that thing is hand-forged, and I believe it's original, based on what I've studied.
They were hand-forging things in the Victorian period, too.
So what about this one?
Okay, this one. Taking a close look, it does have a foundry marking on it.
Davis's face showed intense frustration. He looked as if he was on the verge of exploding at the expert, but somehow he managed to hold back. However, this restraint might not last long. Take a look at this.
If you want one of these, I can get you one for $1,500.
No, they're worth a lot more than that. If you think you can find these on the internet for $1,500, knock yourself out, because it's not going to happen.
If you're not exposed to the market and don't know where to find a piece like this, you know, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, not out of the question. But the value, about $1,500.
Corey is interested in purchasing the ancient axes from Davis, but whether they can strike a deal remains to be seen. Let's watch how their negotiation plays out.
I mean, if I were to make you an offer, I'd make you an offer of around $1,500.
Are you talking a piece?
No, I'm talking total.
No, I'm not interested at all.
Well, if I were you, next time I'd buy one, I'd call Craig too. All right, appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Bye.